Hi, everyone. Welcome to an episode of Life Unpotted today. Want to give you just our classic announcement since this releases on Tuesday. We have our community Zoom sessions for free at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central tonight, every Tuesday. So just a community space to come hang out, talk about whatever it is on your mind, and just a place to be seen, a place to discuss what you're feeling, what you're thinking, and just watch others do the same thing, and maybe it's on the same topic, and that can just help be validating. So we do these every Tuesday. Feel free to register below, and we'll see you there tonight. All right, Sophie, we're podcasting now, so I'll give us the introduction. I think right now, this is going to be an interesting episode. I think my demeanor probably speaks volumes in this moment because today was just one of those days where I was triggered by emotions that came up. And, when we talk about this idea of feeling, it's always like, well, feeling, what does feeling mean? And like for me today, what feeling meant was that I felt a lot of emotions arise, a lot of things come up. And what I didn't do was turn them into anger, of shutting down and closing off and getting mad at other people around me. And I didn't try to distract myself. I didn't try to numb myself with, sugar or caffeine or these kinds of things. What I did do was I fucking cried, and it was painful, and I felt the feelings, and I did that. And it was weird because I usually in the past, I would project, I would get mad, I would blame what I was feeling on someone else's action, but I didn't do that. I just sat with the difficult feelings. And it's the quote that I always come back to with Alan Watts of feelings are meant to come to a completion in their cycle, like childbirth. At the beginning, it's so painful. And at the end, a child is born. That means that you have gone through the full cycle of the task at hand, and it's gave you life. And I think that is what this experience is. And I feel like I've been aware of that. But to be honest, I haven't really been triggered much by things. But if you're new here, it's noises. They make me feel upset, unsafe, uncomfortable, and these are all things that are just deeply cemented in the subconscious. They're deeply, deeply cemented in the subconscious. There's no logic or reason with the mind. It's simply just feeling through these pains and this discomfort. And that's what I did. And I'm really grateful to myself that I allowed myself to delay my day to do that, to delay podcasting, to do that, to deeply feel the feelings, because that's what allows us and allows me to show up authentically and relaxed and not trying to run away from anything, not trying to distract from anything, not trying to avoid feeling anything, because I certainly felt it. And I wonder if that is something that is easily understandable to our standard listener, because these are things that I've been aware of and working through for years. And I'm just getting to this point where I'm realizing you don't have to have any thoughts. You can just feel the feelings. And at the end of the day, everyone has different things that are in their subconscious that are painful. And at the end of the day, it's just pain. And sitting through it is what allows us to loosen up, to lighten up, and to actually be here as we are and not be here based off what our conditionings were, based off what our early experiences in childhood were. Because all that shit's in our body, no matter who you are, no matter what your upbringing was. There's things that you experienced when you were young that are just in your body, and it doesn't have to be that deep. And what I mean in regards to that is that it can actually be quite simple. We don't have to overcomplicate it. It's allowing ourselves to feel, and it's a gift. And I know that just hearing that may sound complicated, and I get that. But I think it's only complicated because we're scared to feel. And as soon as we're allowing ourselves to just let go, allowing ourselves to just feel it, we're going to realize how intuitive it really is. So that is where I'm at right now, and I'm grateful to feeling because it's relaxing when you're on the other side of it.
I definitely resonate with that. And it's interesting because we've been doing this podcast for a year now. And I remember when I first started getting to know myself, I was reading, The Power of Now, all these books, and really starting to understand that I'm triggered by a lot of things, or I often feel triggered by a lot of things. And it's very interesting through this journey of healing or just becoming aware, really, you start to see the patterns repeat themselves. And it can be surprising because I personally love to reach this point where I like to think that I'm healed and everything's fine. And I want to be careful with using the word healed because it's easy to think that that means something's wrong with us, that we have all this pain or we have this difficulty or it's hard for us to enjoy life. We're feeling stressed, we're feeling anxious, we're feeling just hurt. So, therefore, we're taught in this world, we've been taught through the lens of mental health that it is those who are broken who need to feel. It is those who are broken that need to heal. And what we've been talking a lot recently is just we are beings, these complex beings, this complex organism that is existing right now. So, whoever is listening to this, you are a human being existing in this life. And I think we really grow up getting so numb to life that we lose sight of the fact that we are constantly feeling. I was looking up the other day, how many emotions do we feel a day? And I forgot the number, but it was just hundreds. We are constantly feeling in every moment. When something happens, we feel. Of course, we feel because that is the greatest capacity. That is the greatest gift that we have as humans. It is our ability to grieve and to mourn and to process and to feel sad, to feel joy, to feel excited, to reminisce, to go through the cycle of these emotions. And I think we forget that because we think that that's not normal, or we think that we shouldn't feel, or we think that's reserved for, oh, I'm only crying when someone died, or I'm only crying when there's a breakup going on, or I'm only crying when something's happening. But how about, I just am feeling because I'm feeling, and I'm feeling because I'm alive.
What if we change it from this topic of healing to the topic of being in touch with your feelings, being in touch with your emotions? Because I feel like when you think of healing, it means something has happened to you. But I think most people don't realize that something has happened to them. They're a human. They were a child at one point. They were sensitive and they were vulnerable. So I think healing, it really has this idea that you got to heal from something that hurt you. And I almost feel like shifting that dialogue to getting in touch with your emotions. Because to me, what getting in touch with my emotions means is that I said this last week, be where your feet are. And what that means is that if I'm in touch with my emotions, if I'm in touch with my feelings, I'm going to understand what I want. I'm going to understand what I don't want. And I'm going to feel deeply. And I'm going to enjoy things deeply. That ice cream I'm going to have is going to taste extra good because I'm not using it as an avoidant tactic. I'm using it because I want to experience the different beauties of life. Like getting in touch with our emotions, it's so easy to be on autopilot. Because I think when we're on autopilot, I know when we're on autopilot, we're not in touch with ourselves. We're not in touch with our emotions. Because when we get in touch with our emotions, that's when we are starting to make changes in our life because we realize that there's nothing to be afraid of when we're in touch with our emotions, when we're in touch with our feelings, because that means that we are empowered to work with ourselves. Because when we're in touch with ourselves and our emotions, we're guaranteed to work with ourselves. We're not going to punish ourselves unnecessarily because that's what happens when we are out of touch with how we're feeling. Our feelings are here to guide us. So when we don't ever get in touch with our feelings, of course we're going to be lost because our compass, it is our emotions. They are our feelings, and they are tools to help guide us onto the path that we want to be on. So when we avoid feeling our feelings because we're so afraid of them, because we don't know what's going to come up, because there is the unknown, which is all understandable. All of this pressure comes to avoiding our emotions and how we feel. And we're almost running from ourselves in a way, and we're not actually in tune with life. And that's why it can feel so difficult. It can feel so lonely because we are whole. We are whole beings, but we are not whole without feeling, because feeling is what allows us to feel whole. If we don't feel whole, it's because we're not feeling. And by feeling, I mean just being in touch with your emotions. There's so many times I can think of where I've been in a situation where someone's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm great." But you read the body language, you read the facial expressions, and you're like, "This person's not okay." But they're going throughout their life as if they are okay. But they're actually not in touch with their emotions. So they're stuck in one emotion. They're not feeling. So I think this is just a really interesting topic because I've been there. I spent so much of my life out of touch with how I felt, what was really happening like in my body, what I really was experiencing. So that's where we create stories in our head to protect ourselves from actually feeling. So we believe these stories that we're unworthy, that we're stupid, that we're unlovable, that we're worthless. We believe these stories as an act to not actually feel the pains of what our body is experiencing. And it's kind of ironic, and maybe it's not, because when we're able to let go of those stories that protect us in our own hell of not feeling, when we let go of those things, we actually start to feel, and it's scary and it's painful, but it's liberating. And that's when you begin to tap into a whole life, a full life, because you're no longer caught up in these ideas of yourself. You're too busy living and experiencing this life based off what's happening in this moment because you're connected to your body and you're not trying to run from a scary feeling because you've already faced it.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts there. So, to the listener, last week on Thursday, I was feeling really sad and I had therapy after that, the day after that. And I had so many insights where I was, I really realized that I've been avoiding acknowledging the reality of what's occurring. And I want to parse this out because it's nuanced. So, in my personal life right now, I'm going through a lot of change. I moved to a new city 6 or so months ago. I've left my job. I'm healing. I'm just facing life, right? And through that cycle, I have reached points where I have clarity. And I've noticed this tendency that when I reach this point of clarity, I think I'm like almost like caught up in this story that everything's fine. Okay. Because I want to feel happy. I want to feel good. And this goes back to, the question of we haven't really posed in a while, but what is happiness? And we could talk a little bit about that as we go throughout this conversation. But I get so caught up, I think, on trying to hold on to this good feeling of happiness, of trying to hold on to this feeling of excitement and of joy and being able to have fun. And what I'm realizing now is that my relationship to sadness and to everything but, say, our view of negative and positive emotions, and I'm using quotes right now because it's this idea we've created about what's a negative emotion, what's a positive emotion. And when I'm experiencing the positive, I'm noticing that part of me is so scared to experience the negative ones. So I think what I do is that I'll get to this point where I'm finally feeling good again. And I'll kind of, I think my subconscious mind will do everything it can to keep me in that state. So for me, we had a conversation the other day where I was just like, yeah, I'm fine. And it's almost like I've gotten so used to avoiding what's really happening that I haven't been able to say, oh, this is actually that's what's unfolding. Like I miss my friends in New York. I miss my family in New York. This move is really, really hard. And what I recognize is that I think I've been scared to admit that to myself because I wasn't sure what that would mean. I wasn't sure what it would mean to accept and acknowledge the reality of what's unfolding. And the biggest takeaway I had in therapy was that two things can be true at once. You can feel really sad and really confused, and you can also be really content with the path that you're on. You can feel really lost, but you can also feel, I don't know, I think we get so scared to feel because we think that if we feel, that means that's going to become our reality. We think that if we feel and we accept and we confront what's unfolding, it's like I can't confront that this is hard for me because all of a sudden this means I can't handle this and that I have to change my mind and I can't move forward. But I think what we forget here is that two things can exist at once and not just two things, right? When we zoom out on this universe, think about how many things are happening at once at the same time. There's so many things happening in this entire ecosystem, in this entire existence. Like, think about how many emotions are unfolding right now across this earth of people. Everything is happening at all times. And I think it's about developing a level of acceptance towards, yes, this is all happening. And I acknowledge that. I recognize, acknowledge that. And that doesn't have to mean anything about me. That doesn't have to mean that just because I'm feeling these things that my life isn't going to turn out a certain way. It's recognizing that the feeling of emotion is temporary, but the story is what keeps us stuck. So I'm not sure if that makes sense, but the point I'm really trying to get across is that we don't need to judge ourselves from confronting what's really unfolding. And we don't have to deny ourselves from saying, hey, this is hard. Hey, this is scary. Hey, I feel lost for no other reason because we're in the middle of a planet existing and I don't know how I got here and I don't know what's going to happen when I die. And those are the questions that will always be here for as long as we're existing. So that's confusing. And we go down this path of the anxiety takes over, the racing thoughts take over, our body starts hurting. It's because we're not giving ourselves love. We're not coming back to ourselves and saying, hey, some part of me right now is talking to me that it needs me to just acknowledge that this is hard. And it's almost like as soon as I acknowledge it, oof, I'm back home. I'm back to myself. I'm back to this place where I feel comforted. I feel safe. I feel seen. I feel seen by myself. And I think that it's hard sometimes to feel seen by ourselves because we're so used to running away from ourselves. So, all of that to be said, it's important to pause and to acknowledge what is unfolding in your body, what is unfolding in these emotions, and recognize that even if your mind feels fine, our emotions are going to do their thing. And we can't run away from them because they're going to be there as long as we're living. So we have to learn how to live with them.
You said something really beautiful there, and I want to bring it back to that, the beginning of what you began to say, was that you're facing life right now. And I think you're just acknowledging now that you are facing life because you are giving yourself the ability to say, yeah, moving to a new city at 30 years old, leaving friends, family, familiarity, job, leaving all of that behind. Yeah, of course, you tell that to a stranger or someone at a bar, and they're going to be like, wow, that's hard. But I think you took it to a step deeper, a level deeper by saying that you're facing life right now because you very well could move. You could have done everything that you've done. And maybe you did do this for a period of time where you ignore the growing pains that come along from that big step. You can just not flourish because whenever you move, there's going to be some sort of change. It's an opportunity to really change the way you exist in life. And sometimes you're going to make a move and you're going to stay the same in a lot of ways. And I say that because this move represents a major shift in how you interact with the world, who you interact with, who you are, what that means. And that's a lot to sit with at 30 years old, at any time in life. But this is a larger representation that you are quite literally changing as a person right now. And that's a lot to go through. And you're feeling through it. You're feeling through life. You're facing things right now. And I think that's really unique because that's really what a lot of this journey is. It's facing things. And we're never going to stop facing things. We're never, okay, I'll repeat that because we're never going to stop facing things ever, but we just get better at it. It never gets easier. We just become more accustomed to it. We become more familiar with it. Not the content. We don't become familiar with that because it's always going to blindside us. But the act of facing things becomes more familiar. And I just feel like there's something here with facing because it comes in waves too. Like I've been feeling really good lately, like genuinely. We went to a karaoke bar last night and I really saw a difference with the way that I showed up in that environment. Like my body felt really loose. Like I was just singing. I wasn't thinking about myself. I didn't sing for the record, but the lyrics are up. This karaoke bar, like everyone's kind of just singing together. Doesn't matter if you're on stage or not, the lyrics are there. So everyone's just like having a good time. And I let myself do that. In the past, my body would have been stiff. I wouldn't have known how to like be free and sing and dance and just express because I would be so judgmental of myself. I'd be so stuck in my body. So I don't know who can relate to that, but it's kind of the idea of you thought you've always been awkward or you've always been uncomfortable, you've always been stiff. And I'm actually seeing that dissolve right now within me because I'm just being myself these days. And that means like just being open and free and having fun and existing in each moment and not thinking about myself so much.
That's really new for you. Like, I think that's a really big deal because, like, when we first met, it was hard to see you. So, what is that experience like for you to kind of get to know yourself again and get to know and see yourself beyond all these limitations you place on yourself? And I just want to say, like, it's beautiful to watch because you are being you and you're not being the fear and you're not being the anxiety or you're not being all these things. You're just being you. And it goes back to this point of it takes time to get to know who we are because we have to unravel the layers.
Right. We're not our conditioning. We're not our experiences. And that's just what's happening with me right now. I'm letting go of the conditionings that I've always marched to, that I've always let guide me, control me, put me in a box. And you know why? Because I'm facing things. So instead of the story existing and keeping me safe from the painful feelings when they come up, I experience them and I face them and I feel them. And that doesn't mean it's every day or every week or even every month. These feelings blindside you with the most random experiences that have nothing to do with the experience. They just bring up something in your body that reminds you of an experience that at some point in your life you had. And that is what I mean by your conditioning. We all live in a conditioning, whether we are aware of it or not. And my conditioning was always just shrink yourself. Don't exist. Don't be there. So that's what I did. I didn't know myself. I didn't exist. I only exist in a ball of stress of feeling like I disappointed everyone. And it's a hard place to exist. But when you face the feelings and you feel the pain and you let go of the stories and the narratives, you're whole again. And you're not mean to yourself and you're not judgmental and you just get to exist. And I can't even describe what that feels like when you spend your entire life hating yourself, wishing that you were someone else, you were different, that you're stuck this way, you're fixed in this manner of being annoying and stupid and ugly and da 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 da, all these horrible things. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about this experience of feeling because it's the only way to let go of these conditionings that confine us into a jail cell. It's the only way.
It's so interesting. I have been so intrigued by realizing number one, the way I viewed myself my whole life that keeps becoming more and more apparent to me. This feeling like I was the odd one out. And what I've realized from having these deep relationships with people is that we all feel that way. Of course, we all feel that way. And this is where we remember, and it's so easy to forget, perceive the vision that we're separate is perceived. It's created by the mind. It's this idea of we all have the same body in terms of we all have a brain, we all have a heart, we all have lungs. we are all the same species having different experiences, yet we all grow up. We all start from children. And that is, I think, the craziest thing to realize, that all these adults I see around me, whether they're in their 30s or 40s or 50s, like 60s, 70s, they were just a kid at one point. And it makes me sad sometimes because our bodies grow up and we start aging, like our body physically starts to age. But what I'm realizing, when I come home to myself, when I really come back to me, that is ageless. It's a sense of peace and warmth and connection, and knowing that there's something more to life than being in this human body, that we're existing on this magical universe. And when I say magic, I mean when we have felt and we have allowed ourselves to feel, we can feel safe enough, we can feel relaxed enough to zoom out and to recognize that the planet's been orbiting around the sun, and it's been around for millions and millions of years, and it's just so easy to go through life disconnected from that reality, disconnected from your existence, disconnected from death. And I was looking at I can never say his name right, Christian Murdy, one of his quotes. And he was just saying, like, you have to die over and over and over again throughout life, meaning you're continuously letting go of this idea about who you are and what this life is. And you're coming back from being millions of miles away in your thought, and you're grounding yourself back in the experience of love and connection. Because isn't that the point of this all? Isn't that the point? To just have fun and share love and share connection, and to feel, whether that's through the arts, through music, through poetry, through writing, whatever way that is. But instead, we think there's somewhere to get. We think there's an end point. We think we have to chase something. We think happiness is something we have to strive for. We think the self created pressure we put on ourselves, all the pressure we put on ourselves, all the pressure we put on other people, and expectation of other people, and reacting to other people. There's just so much. There's so much happening all the time. And I don't know. I'm losing my train of mind, because I don't know. I just have lost it.
Well, on that topic, I have an interesting point. I was running today and it was a really hard workout. It was like a sprint, slow, sprint, slow. And I noticed it was hard for me to go transition from running really hard to run a little softer because my breath was out of touch. And it made me think of the importance of, when we're trying to achieve something, the importance of slowing down. For example, doing something like breath work is something that we might write off if we're like, I'm trying to win a race or I'm trying to be the best. But when you actually want to become holistically or something whole, it's not all just about guns down, rushing, or pushing yourself really hard. It also includes softening and doing the things like breath work that you might write off in this society because what's that going to do for you? Why don't you run harder instead? But it's in these moments that we can holistically see ourselves for what we are, when we're also able to slow down. And I just thought that was an interesting POV, because I think a lot of us get trapped in the self development cycle of, I just need to become better, stronger, faster, the best version of myself. But I think sometimes what we forget is that the best version of ourselves includes slowing down, and includes giving self compassion. And going back to what we were saying earlier, it goes back to facing the actual pain. Does that resonate, Sophie?
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I think we need to incorporate into our lives tools to help us connect. Because when we're going through life and it's busy and we're working and we're trying to make a living and we're trying to get by, it's hard to prioritize this. So That's why this podcast exists, so that you can remember twice a week to connect to yourself. And I went through a phase the past month where I was writing off meditation and journaling and this stuff because I was like, I don't want to get attached to it. I don't want to need it. I don't want to need to meditate. I don't want to need to journal. I don't want to need to do any of these things. And I don't need it. I will be fine without it, but it helps. So it's about connecting and accessing the tools that help us ground and come back.
So, something interesting is happening right now in this episode because something that you maybe can't pick up on is that we are in a very vulnerable state right now. And when you are in that super raw, vulnerable state, you feel open and you feel relaxed, but you're raw. So if someone accidentally pushes you or looks at you wrong, it's going to bring up that pain. It's going to feel like you want to be angry. It's going to feel like you want to be mad or you want to self sabotage yourself. And these are all things that we can do, or we can choose to feel the pain and sit with it. And it's interesting because when we have this awareness gap between feeling the pain and realizing that we don't have to react toward it, that we can just experience it, that's really hard. And that's what all of this is about. And I think that's just what's happening between us right now. And that's okay. That's part of what this experience is. And it's because it's not easy, it's really hard, but that's just the truth of the work. It's really hard. And Sophie, I can tell that I did something that brought up that pain in you. And I can see you struggling to choose which direction to go in right now.
Yeah, part of me all of a sudden feels triggered and annoyed and it's like nothing I'm saying is valuable and this podcast sucks. So it's like, why does that shit come up? Like, why is that my default way of responding when I feel hurt?
Well, is that because instead of feeling the hurt, you're choosing to believe the narratives and the stories that keep you safe from feeling that pain?
Well, it's like anger. It's like being a kid and someone not listening to you or cutting you off and like you just want your parents' attention and they're not validating you. It's like that experience of when you get hurt, when you feel hurt. Like it's so easy to want to just stay mad. Like I just got annoyed because I was talking and something triggered me and clearly I'm in an open state. So it's like you were trying to tell me like I was talking away from the mic and I was like zoning out and I felt like I was like connected to myself and now all of a sudden I feel like disconnected from myself and it's like I'm angry. So, but I know I'm not angry, but it's like that comes up just to show like this isn't so fucking simple and easy. Like while I'm recording this episode, like I feel triggered and it's just like it's confusing. And it makes me feel like a teenager that wants to like throw everything in my room. Like that's the feeling that comes up. And that's how I cope so much of my life was just like to throw my clothes and freak out and have panic and like freak out at everyone and yell at everyone and yell at like my little sister when I was like cleaning the room and being like, screw you, fix this shit, fix it. Like I couldn't handle the emotions coming up. So I would get mad at everyone else around me and say, fix this, fix this. What are you doing? What's wrong with you? Or yelling or getting mad. And it sucks that that way forward, it just hurts you more because that way feels the best sometimes. It feels soothing to get mad.
Well, it also hurts those around you because your defense mechanism is to.
So why does it like feel soothing? I don't understand that. Is that not
That's
real?
deceiving. It's deceiving because it's actually going to disrupt your life in a negative way that are actually safe bonds and safe connections with people. Is that you don't want people to see you in your pain because you don't want to see it yourself, that you are going to push them away by, instead of feeling and letting them see the pain, you're going to turn it into a weaponized response with anger. And that's what I see happening right now. And I understand. I understand it. But I don't think that you have to make that decision. I think you can sit with the pain, but I think oftentimes that'll bring you to tears, it'll bring you to your knees because it's so painful. But I promise that it's better to feel it and to feel helpless than it is to turn it to anger and to put it onto those around you. I promise you, it's easier than that because it's so much more short lived and it's much more full of love. And I know that's what you want. And as I know you want to feel love, I know you want to feel whole, and I know you want to feel complete. And it's hard. It's really hard.
And then it's like as soon as I start feeling hurt, the judgments of the podcast coming out, the judgments on being so vulnerable, oh, who's listening to this? Like,
But
why am I expressing myself so
do
much?
you
Like,
understand how helpful this is? Do you understand
yeah, I
if
do.
you were listening to this, how helpful and relatable it would be to hear someone expressing the nuance of being able to switch the pain you feel from a reaction of anger and sabotage to a feeling of allowing yourself to feel the pain, to feel like that helpless kid, and to allow yourself to bridge that to feel whole and complete and relaxed and loved.
I feel like it reminds me of like my mom being like, don't air your dirty laundry. Like, don't tell anybody anything. Like, everything has to be personal, everything has to be private. And yeah, it's hard when you're feeling hurt to be the one who's being so open. And when I'm not feeling hurt, it's easier for me because I see the clarity of, oh, we're all connected and I don't feel divided from anyone. But as soon as I feel hurt, I feel divided. I feel like it's me versus them. I'm being attacked. Oh, I'm exposing myself. Someone's hearing me. Someone's judging me. And I guess because I just know I used to operate that way, I did used to judge people. And I did used to judge people, but I guess I just judged because I was judging myself because I was so hurt. And it's just so confusing. Like in yoga today, I had so many thoughts coming up of like just judgment of other people, like criticizing other people in my mind. Like I saw the thoughts coming up and I'm like, I feel like I used to judge people so much throughout so much of my life. Like, oh, that person, like, why do they have that kind of yoga mat? Or why are they doing that pose like that? And it's just like, because I'm judging myself. And it's hard to come to terms with how much I've judged myself my whole life and how much pressure I've put in myself my whole life. And that's what's coming up for me right now. It's like doing my English homework in seventh grade and feeling like a fucking moron because I didn't know because I was dealing with so much shit that like I couldn't do my homework and like wanting to throw my paper. And from there, hating to do work and hating writing and hating expressing myself, like the fucking school system and being with your peers at that age, it's hard, and then, like, not wanting to express yourself to your parents because feeling like they don't get it and just feeling so alone, and that stuff lives in me and lives in us as we get older.
So it's clear that I see it's clear that everything that you're feeling right now was already at the surface before I told you to speak into the mic. And that was just the final thing that brought it out. That was it. That was there. And it's almost like we can look at these things that bring it out as a gift. I'm not going to say that to you right now because I see that you're in the depths of it.
I have the awareness though.
Well, I'm saying because like earlier today, like what sent me into all of my feeling state, I can recognize what threw me into that state had nothing to do what it actually was. It was all just me needing to let it out, let my body feel it. And it didn't need to be attached to any ideas or things. It was just the state that my body was in. And I see the state that your body is in is pain.
And it's like, this is why you can get in the way of following your dreams or creating or self-expressing. Because for me, my pain translates into judgment of myself. So when I'm feeling hurt, I judge myself. And that gets in the way because I judge the work I create. I think it's not good enough. I think it's not high quality. I put so much pressure on myself. And I think that that experience I'm having is true. Or I think like I'm mad about this. So I think that's true. But it's not really that thing. Like it's not the podcast, it's prior experiences. But you can spend your whole life thinking it is that thing, thinking it's a podcast. And I never pick up the mic again because I think I'm feeling this way because of the podcast.
Right. And there would have been times where we quite literally thought it was the podcast and we would have like pushed the mics aside and paused the episode and gotten angry and stopped and gotten mad at each other and projected the anger onto each other of like, oh, but you didn't follow what we were supposed to say when you were talking. And this isn't perfect. And I'm trying to control you because that's how I'm projecting this pain versus feeling it. It's so interesting because it's never the medium, it's just you. And that's hard to accept. You know, this conversation has taken such a funny
Oh
turn.
my God. I'm like, what just happened? And obviously, it's like, yeah, it is funny because it's like, well, yeah, it's not all of a sudden it's not perfect. And it's like, but this is the reality of the experience. Like, I was feeling so connected, then I wasn't. And that's exactly what we're talking about. So yeah, I'm just
Well,
curious.
it's funny because perfection is just like the mind at work trying to fixate on the illusion of control. That's all it is. And I observed that come up and I'm like, but who am I to say? Who am I to control Sophie's expression? I'm not the ruler. I'm not the dictator of the podcast. I can't control that. By controlling that, I'm only going to make myself anxious or like feel angry about it. Like I've moved past that. This is just a place to fucking feel. And that's going to look kind of funny sometimes. It's going to get a little weird. Like it's not going to make sense in the typical standard way that you'd set a podcast up, but like that's just the reality of life though. It's far from perfect.
Well, it's like the podcast is just a vehicle to express. So that might mean different things to different podcasters.
Yeah, and like in a way we just worked through that. I mean, I don't know the reality of how you're feeling right now, but you're not feeling as triggered as we once were. We continued to talk through this and we moved through, we worked through it, and that's where we're at. So that's a success to me.
Yeah. And I guess just a reminder that you're always going to have to face shit. Like, I don't think we come to a point where anger doesn't come up or we're immune from wanting to project or get mad at other people. But it's just the discipline has to be there to saying it might feel more comfortable to sabotage the situation, but that's not what you really want. Going back to Michael Singer, like, whatever you do, stay open. Stay open to the pain, stay open to the hurt, stay open. And
Wave that pain over here. Say, pain, come here. I'll
come on
wrap a blanket over
over,
you.
hurt. Come on over.
I definitely sensed a little anger from you.
I was angry.
I know.
And it's so easy to put on the person right in front of you. Kick the dog syndrome. My mom used to say that.
Yeah. So I'm curious.
What an interesting episode.
I know. I'm curious to see how, because I still feel very open because I went through this before we recorded. So it only makes sense that you went through it while we recorded because this shit's contagious.
Well, it's like when sometimes it's like I'm annoyed when you're feeling because it's like it brings up it in me, but it's like that means there's always something to be brought up. So it just shows like when you take mushrooms, things come up that you're like, holy shit, I didn't know I was feeling that. So clearly I've been feeling this. It just takes time to rise to the surface. Like,
And I was the lucky one to bring it up for you.
so thank you.
You're welcome. Well, guys, I think that's where we conclude this podcast. So thanks for listening, and we will be posting this on Tuesday. So we will see you on Thursday, and we hope you enjoyed this. We just being real, you know what I mean? So have a great weekend.
Not trying to be anything, not trying to deny, and recognizing like it doesn't make you weak.
Well, that's the thing. It requires the most amount of strength to actually feel things. So on that note, take inventory of your feelings, where they're at, and how you're reacting to them or if you're sitting with them. So I hope this episode was helpful, and we'll see you guys on Tuesday.
I hope this episode was whatever it was, and enjoyable and insightful and insightful and yeah. There's a lot to learn. We're always learning. You're always a student and a teacher. Talk to you guys on Thursday. Bye.